Past Paradise uncovers the unseen history of your favorite programs. Today, we're exploring Star Trek, a fan favorite for decades. Behind the scenes, things were different. Even diehard Trekkies may have yet to learn about cast disagreements or breakthrough television choices that transformed history. Did you know that William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy had a tumultuous off-screen relationship that led to passionate private moments? Or that network officials criticized the show's progressive attitude, including the first interracial kiss on American TV? We'll examine Star Trek's successes and failures, including the shocking scandals that almost ruined it. Join us as we uncover the controversies and incredible tales that made Star Trek a TV classic. Get ready to be astounded by the real-life drama behind this classic program. Suitable for TV? Because Star Trek was often too controversial at the time, it had many edits before being given the green light. This is particularly true when contrasted to contemporary television material. But when sexy sequences were considered excessively for inappropriate material, censors who previewed the show often overlooked other allusions. A little piece of apparel and a passionate kiss enabled the creators of A Private Little War to subtly mention the Vietnam War without anybody noticing. Shatner's odd requests. William Shatner is a very talented guy with high expectations. One of the original authors, Norman Spinrad, suggested giving the captain the most words in every episode, even if it meant devoting less important speaking to other characters. The September 1966 email. Please note that Leonard's credit is to be no more than 75% of the type that we offered to William Shatner, is also blatantly obvious. Shatner insisted on using a larger font to make his name seem physically bigger throughout the credits. Writing struggles. Despite receiving approval for his science fiction series, Roddenberry and Desilu Studios soon discovered they urgently needed screenplays. The issue was that relatively few authors, even seasoned television writers, could understand the science fiction content. As a result, Roddenberry asked writers, authors, and even office workers for screenplays. It should not be shocking that the scripts would become expensive since there was a great demand for these screenplays. Angry rewrites. Despite Roddenberry's intense desire for science fiction scripts, he even went so far as to request an episode written by I Am Legend creator Richard Matheson. He had a way of ruining the original drafts. It became well known that he would entirely rewrite screenplays, eliminating any unnecessary, disliked concepts or elements. Another well-known author of the era, Harlan Ellison, penned City on the Edge of Forever. It was to be anticipated that the narrative was altered so much that Ellison asked to have his name replaced during the credits, but his request was turned down. Spock or One. In the pilot's reshoot, Roddenberry had to choose between the female protagonist, number 1, and the satanic-looking Spock. He removed number 1 because he thought he could do more with Spock's plot, but he kept Spock's planned, rational, but emotionally detached attitude. The Captain and Yeoman Janice Rand. The Captain is divided in The Enemy Within between an evil imposter version of himself and a decent Kirk. In one scenario, Yeoman Janice Rand is confronted by the evil version of her love for the imposter himself. She gets away from him when he tries to move. The actor who played Yeoman, Grace Lee Whitney, said the following about the episode. Mr. Spock needles me about my feelings towards the evil Kirk in a poorly motivated, out-of-character moment. There's almost a nasty leer on Spock's face as he says to me, "The imposter had some very interesting qualities, wouldn't you say, Yeoman?" My reaction was to disregard the taunt, the speaker went on. I can't think of a more callous and inconsiderate remark a man could make to a woman who had just experienced a traumatic event. Enjoying the cast. Roddenberry was still wed to his first wife, Eileen Roddenberry, during the start of the television show's production. Everyone in the studio knew that he was seeing both Majel Barrett and Nichelle Nichols at the same time. Barrett and Roddenberry went so far as to live together for the first several weeks of the main shooting. His first wife ended their relationship, and he later wed Barrett, who became known as the First Lady of Star Trek. Avoiding the love. While Shatner remained the show's main protagonist, Leonard Nimoy emerged as the audience favorite. The crowd would always swarm him while he went out. He started drinking because he couldn't take the pressure from the public. On his days off, he drank from when he woke up till the following morning. Despite being aware of his addiction, the cast and crew would overlook it as he would consistently come up for work prepared to film. Fighting for renewal. Lucille Ball's production company, Desilu, produced the series early, but just before the second season, Gulf and Western abruptly bought her business, giving Paramount Studios full control of Star Trek. Paramount even attempted to sell the program back to its creator for $150,000, but the inventor needed the necessary funds. Producer Herb Solow said, Paramount didn't want Star Trek because it was losing too much money each week and didn't have enough episodes to syndicate. Still, Paramount continued to produce the program and even the sequel films. Illegal uniform. Due to their incredibly tight budget at the premiere, producers Herb Solow and Robert Justman got around certain standard Hollywood practices. Instead of paying union customers, they revealed their costumes were made overnight in a sweatshop, slipping the finished items past the crew's rear window to escape notice. Clever or immoral? Pride. The program included heterosexuality, hints of twisted bisexual tales, and even partnerships between other animals. However, lesbians and gays? Not in that way. The charming George Takei's character, Sulu, an astronomy physicist, did notice the inappropriate showing. In private, he inquired about the dearth of same-sex relationships. In 2005, Takei would come out as homosexual, a historic moment. Can't bear to see himself. You may find it amazing that Shatner never saw himself as the tough Captain Kirk despite over 79 episodes and a few water features. And no, it has nothing to do with the content. It's only that the individual himself finds it too painful to see himself on film. In addition to not wanting to see himself, he never retained anything on the set. I have nothing that I have kept. I would have chosen the suit if I had had the option to choose between a designer suit and a Star Trek shirt. I ought to have been more aware. False positive royalties. Composer Alexander Courage was supposed to get royalties each time an episode of the show aired when NBC took it up. Unfortunately for him, Courage and Roddenberry worked out a deal whereby the program's creator would get half of these royalties since he was going to write the theme song's lyrics. But his lyrics were never utilized since they were so ill-fitting and unsingable. Nevertheless, this never prevented him from getting half of the revenues. Sabotage by NBC. NBC was particularly conscious of the fact that ratings are important. The show's production costs were very high, and its low viewership did not make up for it. When Roddenberry learned that NBC was attempting to axe his program, he encouraged viewers to tell the network how much they enjoyed the science fiction drama. It was thought that the network was trying to pull the program off the air after moving it to Fridays at 10 p.m., one of the worst times to run, and cutting the show's budget by more than 60%. Gene Coon. Even though Gene Coon did not originate Star Trek, he made a lasting impression. He is recognized for creating Starfleet Command, the Oregonian Peace Treaty, and the Klingons. He is credited with authoring several well-known episodes, including A Taste of Armageddon and The Devil in the Dark. He quit between the second and third seasons because he and Roddenberry were too often at odds. William Shatner and J.J. Abrams. When J.J. Abrams started reimagining Star Trek for the big screen, he requested that Nimoy appear in the picture and wished that Shatner would too. Sadly, according to the Abrams writing team, Shatner wanted the movie to focus on him significantly. When it became clear that this would not work, Shatner went against Abrams. On the other hand, Shatner warmed up to Abrams after the movie's premiere because he liked how Chris Pine played his original role. A blessing in disguise. Surprisingly, the phrase, "live long and prosper," originates from a gesture made by Nimoy to a youngster during an Orthodox Jewish synagogue ceremony. I hear this weird sound coming from them, and everyone has their hand covering their eyes or their tallit down over their faces. They were shouters rather than singers. additionally discordant. Everything was dissonant, and it was eerie. I peered because I thought, whoa, something big is happening here. And I saw them motion toward the assembly with their hands protruding from behind the tallit. Shin, a Hebrew letter for Shaddai, another name for God. Many, many dresses. No miniskirt was in sight as the female cast members donned formal Fleet Command uniforms throughout the pilot. However, as the show went on, viewers started complaining to the program about how sexist this detail was. Star Trek scholar Nigel Mitchell explains that the ardent supporters replied, "Nuh-uh, it wasn't sexist to wear miniskirts, since, well, guys wore them too. It was gender neutral." Strange given that the issue is still being debated. Lack of respect. In 2015, William Shatner did not attend Leonard Nimoy's burial. Even though Spock becomes Shatner's favorite character in the series, the two finally overcome their envy and resume their friendship. Shatner feels that this documentary, The Captains, was included against Nimoy's objections and featured him giving a speech at a convention. The two did not communicate again after this episode. Male objectification. In addition to their obvious sexuality, males were shown as objects of admiration. Captain Kirk repeatedly and gladly gave himself to women to rescue his crew, but Michael Forrest, who plays Apollo in Who Mourns for Adonais, has his account of being objectified. "They had to tape my breast to get through that show. Is it even possible to imagine? They covered a man's chest with tape. Come on, I mean. However, that is what they did, and on top of it, they applied cosmetics. I remember thinking, it's unbelievable what they're doing." Shatner versus Takei. George Takei, a well-known figure on social media, told ABC News that it might be challenging to collaborate with those who lack teamwork skills. The remaining cast members know that everyone's contribution makes a scene work. Shatner was not invited to Takei's wedding, even though he is a fantastic actor and is aware of it. He also enjoys having the camera focused on him constantly. He replied, "The whole thing makes me feel bad, poor man," in a YouTube video. There's this kind of illness there. That there is a psychosis is so blatantly clear. I'm not sure what he thought of me at first. I'm still determining. Initially rejected. The Cage, the pilot who came before Star Trek, existed before the series. Network officials contended that the script and idea would be too complex for viewers to understand. Furthermore, they said that Spock seemed satanic and that the audience would find it intolerable to have a female second in command. To get the program cleared for production, creator Gene Roddenberry revamped the show, revised the screenplay, and recruited new actors. Some actors lost hearing. When Spock tosses a pebble, it explodes when it reaches the ground in the Star Trek episode The Apple. In reality, several performers had to be sent to the hospital for inner ear injuries due to the extreme loudness of the noises they employed for special effects. DeForest Kelley, who portrays McCoy, said he had experienced tinnitus for the last 20 years. Almost rebooted. Almost 20 years before, following the critical and economic failure of William Shatner's Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, the J.J. Abrams Trek reboot, Paramount almost approved a similar Starfleet Academy prequel film premise. However, following widespread protests from both the actors and fans, the corporation scrapped the plan and instead focused on creating Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country. At first, Spock was meant to be painted crimson. What would Star Trek have become without Spock's sharp ears, expressive eyebrows, and yellow-tinted skin? At first, Spock intended to have a red Martian appearance to stand out from other humans as much as possible. Unfortunately, for black and white television, the red paint they had planned to use would not have worked. Tiger attack on set. The Bengal tiger used to film Shore Leave on site came free, frightening everyone. Fortunately for the actors and crew, they were able to subdue the tiger before anything dangerous occurred. Shatner says, "Sheer abject terror replaced the ignorant machismo that pulsed so heartily through my veins." D.C. Fontana. Among the most significant authors in Star Trek history is Dorothy Catherine Fontana. She worked as a story editor and freelance writer on the show, creating some of the most memorable episodes. Sadly, she was forced to use the name DC for everything. Fontana, since the 1960s, women have not been allowed to work in many sci-fi fields. Over the next 40 years, Fontana did go on to work on several other television shows, such as Star Trek: The Next Generation. Roddenberry forced out. Although Star Trek: The Motion Picture was a huge commercial success, reviewers and viewers alike felt that the film's cerebral plot was unclear and too convoluted. Paramount obliged Roddenberry to serve as an unpaid consultant for the rest of the film series in preparation for the anticipated sequel. After Star Trek: The Next Generation's first 2 seasons, Roddenberry experienced similar circumstances and lost almost all of his creative control over the show. Leonard Nimoy only returns to direct. As we have established, Leonard Nimoy had a difficult connection with Star Trek, and he almost didn't return for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. In exchange for Spock's death in the film, Nimoy only consented to return for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. When Paramount gave in to the requests, Spock's death rose to prominence in the annals of cinema history. The response was so positive that Paramount immediately asked Nimoy for the follow-up. The actor, however, only consented to direct the movie. Once again, Paramount gave in, and both Star Trek III: The Search for Spock and its Nimoy-directed sequel, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, often known as The One with the Whales, were huge hits.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon